Tonight's guest, Tasha Randall, claims to be in touch with pathways to other worlds and bizarre dimensions. She has a lineage and a long family history of psychic abilities and extrasensory perception. In the second half, we'll also speak with her mother, Eva. So here's my interview with Tasha Randall.
Hello, my name is Tasha, and I was born and raised in Las Vegas. And I grew up with a family that were very spiritual. My grandmother was known for doing palm readings and tarot cards and stuff like that. I wasn't really into any of that, but I did. I was raised by my mother, who taught me that we are made up of love and energy, and that we could be and do anything we wanted in life. And so that was a really big part of, I believe, what was to come later in my life. I remember, like in high school, visiting my grandmother, and she was drawing aliens and pyramids and UFOs, and I was like, okay. I mean, I wasn't into it, but it definitely stuck in my mind. And then after I graduated high school, I went to massage school. And I graduated high school in 99. And so around 2002, I graduated from massage school and practiced that for many years. And in 2011, my being a therapist took a huge turn. I had heard of people talking about communicating with people's loved ones that have passed away and guides and stuff like that. But I really had no interest in any of that. But I went to a client's to do a session, and 20 minutes into the session, I experienced this overwhelming, loving, beaming energy surge through every single cell of my body, just lit up with this loving, overwhelming, loving, blissful energy. And and in that moment, I got like a download. I'm a family relative that has passed away, and I'm here to love and support him, him being my client on my table. And so I asked my client, do you have any family relatives that have passed away? And he was like kind of shocked that I would ask him something like that. I'm sure because he was like face down, and I'm working on him. But he said, yeah, my dad. And I said, well, he's here. And that was the end of that. Unfortunately, I guess he didn't have any desire to communicate with his dad. But for me, it changed my world. I mean, it flipped my world upside down because in that moment, I was shown that we never stop existing, that these bodies that we're in is just an avatar in a sense, and that we are truly magnificent beings, and yeah. So I can start there.
No, that's fantastic. So, okay, now I want to get into the actual feeling. Let's get deeper into the description of that feeling when you come to that point of realization and how you change, you know, a shift in perspective, a paradigm shift when you start to realize certain things. Can you talk a little bit more about that actual shift in perspective? If it's, sometimes it can't be articulated because it's so unique, but what were some of the things you were feeling and experiencing during that time?
Yeah, so I mean, when you're working on someone, as in massage therapy, working on somebody, you are put into this somewhat meditative state of consciousness, already automatically because you're working on someone. So, I was in my heart space, I guess you would call it. And later on, learning that I had to be in that heart space in order to have such an amazing experience with the non physical. Um, and the best way I can describe it is like this almighty, like God, like beaming, like every single cell in my body was just like in this blissful state. I mean, it's really difficult to explain any better than that. And it just was unexpected. I was not expecting that to happen. So it was pretty dramatic. And after that happened, I mean, just back to back experiences, like experiences that were all taught not even possible, were happening to me. And I mean, one after another. I don't know if I answered that question of yours.
No, you did.
I,
And again, like I always try to go deeper to hear because, like the audience is hearing it for the first time, and I love because you have these profound, everyone has these profound broad strokes in their history, and I want to go a little deeper into each of those strokes. So, you experiencing this bliss was something out of the ordinary because you had times of happiness and you had times of success, and life is this roller coaster, but then you experience this absolute bliss that is, it's different than anything you've ever felt. Has that sustained since then, or is it at times it comes back in?
No, I've never experienced anything like that since. No. I mean, in meditation, I've experienced, a loving energy, but nothing like that. I mean, that was definitely something outside of, I mean, it was definitely, you knew it was something uh, not of this world. It really, God is the best is the best word to use it, and I'm not a God or Jesus kind of person. Like I said, I grew up in a spiritual family. God and religion and Jesus was not really used in my family or my home, but it was. I would no doubt say that it was God. I mean, that's how just powerful and almighty it was.
Do you think, and now that you mention that, do you think when people feel like, let's say, their deity, whether it be Christ or whoever, is visiting them, has touched them, that it's the same exact thing that you experienced, however, it's from their perspective. So of course they're gonna say, well, this was Christ, whatever came to me. Do you
One
think
hundred
it's a
percent.
similar thing?
Oh
Okay.
yeah, 100%. But I'd like to just include that I don't know if you know anything about Dr. Joe Dispenza. Um, he's a he's a neuroscientist. He's showing people how to heal through meditation. And what I love about him is that he brings spirituality and science together. So he does brain scans on people to see, what's happening in the mind and the brain as they're doing these meditations, because he's also expressed having this overwhelming, loving, beaming energy through his body. So when you hear someone say that, you know exactly what they're talking about because you've experienced it yourself. But you can get to that point or have that experience in many different ways. It can be in many different ways. It could be, following your highest excitement, and having that open heart, like orgasm is what he kind of calls it. Um, yeah, it's just so magical. I mean, it just is really so magical, and there's no guessing about what it was.
Is there a way to call that in? And obviously, we're going to explore all of your experiences and things that have happened. You glimpsing into other worlds, other dimensions, experiencing that world wherever this comes from. But are there ways to call on this or induce this somehow?
I would have to say through meditation, through your heart's desire, to connect, to know, first of all, to know. That was one of the most frustrating things for me, after having this experience, was that, oh my gosh, I had to come back to this reality where the majority of my fellow humans are they don't have a clue. We're not taught this. No one tells us this, that we are these non-physical energetic beings that never stop existing, and that we are always connected to the universe, to our non-physical self, because again, this is just an avatar. This life experience is one of many thousands that we are having. And there's so much to go into, because past lives and future lives don't really exist, because everything's going on simultaneously. So we're actually just living other lifetimes in this now moment. But because of the way we experience time on our planet and our dimension, we see it as a past or future life. I mean, there's just really so much involved in these topics, because, well, they're foreign to many people. You're like, what, wait, what is she talking about, so it's fascinating to talk about these things, but I don't know if I
Of
answered your
course.
question.
You did. Do you think there's some kind of shift that's happening where more people are coming to this realization that this multidimensional, if you will, perspective, or multi-existence, or existential perspective is becoming more acceptable, whereas in the past it was, what you see is what you get, and whatever's in front of us is reality.
Well, it's interesting to say that you say, what you see is what you get, or I'll believe it if I see it, because our eyes are deceiving us all the time. Our eyes can only see 1% of the spectrum of light. And so we see very little. And the more that you become aware of your multi-dimensional self, because we are multi-dimensional beings, we exist not just in this plane and in these bodies. We also exist in the non-physical, and then we have our astral body as well, which your astral body is it's not a dream. You travel in a and I don't want to say it's a body, but it is a body because I've experienced it and I actually felt goosebumps on my arms. So it is a body. It's just in a maybe a higher dimensional body. So we don't obviously are not aware of it in this dimension because this is a very dense reality. This dimension is very dense. I do believe that there's a shift going on our planet, and 100% that is why I believe I've had these experiences because spirit wants me to share this knowledge with humanity, and they know that I will. And a lot of people, I'm not the only one, there's many people in the world that are having these amazing experiences with ETs or, the non physical spirits and things like that. I know that like in the 80s, I think it was called the harmonic convergence, is when we on a collective soul level agreed that we would not blow ourselves up again, because that seems to be the pattern with civilizations on planet Earth is that, our technology gets really good, but we don't grow emotionally on an emotional level. We stay pretty immature. And so we end up blowing ourselves up with our technology. But the harmonic convergence was, I believe, in the 80s. I can't remember what year, but it was an agreement that we all had as a collective that we would not blow ourselves up again, that we would actually shift into a higher level of consciousness. There are hundreds of children that are just learning how to speak. I mean, I'm talking 2 to 5 years old that are talking about their past life they just came from in such great detail that the parents actually find that who they were. I mean, it's mind blowing, and it's not always a pleasant experience for the children because it starts out where they usually are having nightmares about how they died in that past life. Um, you know, and some of them are really really telepathic or really psychic and they communicate with non-physical. So yes, I definitely see a huge shift in the consciousness, but because it's been so dense on our planet for so long, it's all the darkness must come to the surface in order for us to see all the darkness so we can change and shift it to what we want it to be.
What was the
you know
first experience that kind of revealed to you there may be something else? What was it only when you were working as a massage therapist, or did something happen before that that gave you a glimpse of this other world?
This is very interesting, and very kind of bizarre in my opinion. So, not until after I had that awakening experience did my memories from childhood come back to me. So, when I was a little girl, I was flying all the time in the astral. I didn't know that that was what I was doing. And again, that memory didn't come to me until after my awakening experience, but which was in 2011. But in around 2007, I remember I was in between living at places and I was wondering where I was going to live next. And I jumped into my friend's pool. And then when I came up out from the water, I saw a vision that I would be living in a house that had a pool. And that's exactly what I experienced. I lived in a house that had a pool. So yeah, our guides are always there for us to connect with and ask questions. We just have to be able to silence our minds enough to hear those answers. But anyway, so yeah, so when I was a little girl, I was astral traveling all the time, and I don't know if if that has anything to do with the fact that my grandpa he worked at Area 51. Now, of course, when I was a little girl, he called it the test site. We didn't know that it was Area 51, and he died when I was like my senior year in high school. So, of course, at that time, I didn't know anything about Area 51. But now looking back, I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it, other than the fact that my grandma and grandpa's backyard was huge. So it gave me a lot of space to like get a lift off, to fly. But yeah, so I guess there were little glimpses throughout my life of, little visions here and there telling me, what I wanted to know. But again, those memories, I just kind of blew them off. I didn't really see how amazing they were because my awakening experience, that was so dramatic. I mean, talk about changing your life, like really, I mean, changing your life completely. And after that, I started being told to take pictures of the sky telepathically, like almost like it came out of a movie. I mean, I was driving and I was told to take a picture of the sky. And I'm like, I'm driving, they're adamant about it. And so I took the photo anyway. I didn't see anything in the sky, but I took the photo anyway. And there's all these little saucers in the photo. And then another occasion, I was walking my dog at the park, and again was told to take the photo of the sky. And I didn't see anything in the sky, but I took the photo anyway. And there's like this boomerang looking craft in the photo. And I mean, just I was taking photos of myself with my phone, and my phone on its own just started taking a bunch of pictures. And I'm like, what's going on with my phone? And you look at the photos, and there's this like little white. like orb thing on right above my head, and you see all these pictures, and it's like this little white thing, like a flip book, just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I would hear things all the time in my house. I took pictures of my living room and my kitchen. Again, I didn't see these bright orbs on my microwave and my stove corner, but you look at the photo and then these bright orbs, and that goes back to us not being able to see, very much with our eyes, being limited to the 1% spectrum of light. But with awareness of these things, your eyes start seeing more.
So it's like, in other words, we're expecting at some point these cameras to, no matter how advanced they continue to get, we're hoping that at some point they really capture some evidence, and perhaps we're missing the idea, and that it's really about opening up our perception, learning how to trust our own built-in perception. Is that true?
100%, 100%. And but the thing with that is that unless you're aware of it, I mean, if it doesn't come into your conscious mind, the possibility of experiencing that, are lower, because it has to be a part of your consciousness somewhat. Like I said, back when I had my awakening experience with my client, I was aware of people communicating with the non-physical during sessions. So I knew that that possibility was there. I had zero intention of having that experience, but just the simple fact that I knew that that was a possibility was what allowed for that to happen, that connection to happen. And all these experiences that I've had, I didn't intend for any of them to happen. I never put forth the intention to have any of the experiences that I've had happen. I don't know if you want me to go into more of them.
Sure. So these things came naturally. And what were some of the most profound experiences along the way that you had?
I would have to say the experience with my client was the most profound because the bliss that I felt, I mean, words really just can't come close to describing how blissful it was. And just in that second, in that moment, I just knew that we don't ever stop existing. And like I was saying before, to try to come back to this dense reality and see how we all are operating on such a low vibrational, like what we're capable of is just so much more than what we limit ourselves with. We limit ourselves so much because we're programmed into this society, and we're just programmed that way to be mean to each
Sure,
other.
that
And
raises a question though. Is that programming, or do you believe that programming is on purpose to reduce our potential?
that programming is 100% done on purpose. But I'd like to say one more thing about that. It's important that we see ourselves in all. It's important that we don't divide ourselves and, see us as separate from this power elite that are controlling us through frequencies, because they are. All of that is true. Both of things are true. So it's not a yes or no, or yes to that and a no to that. It's this and that. But the important thing is to overcome that and to realize that we are so much more powerful than the games that we actually set up for ourselves. We come here, we choose to come to this planet. We know what's going on this planet. We want to come here. When we're in the non physical, this is an exciting place to be. Until we get here and we are in these dense bodies and we're struggling with just everyday, things that we are forced to do to have a roof over our heads. It's very exciting to come here when you're all knowing, and you're this powerful, blissful, non physical being. Oh yeah, I want to go and get in a human body and have a life experience. It's about broadening our minds, and there's so much involved with that. Death doesn't exist. And so when you say death doesn't exist, it literally doesn't exist. I mean, when your body perishes, you literally just detach from it and you feel more alive than you ever did in this lifetime. I mean, and you're so happy because you're not held in this body anymore. You're still you, but you're just not in a human condition anymore. And so it's a very blissful thing.
Sure. And what's okay, so that's interesting to me. And I've always thought about that because I also believe we move on and we go on, and there are other existences and perception after physical death. However, I'm wondering if some of these rules put in place in various religious tomes and ideas of, because if it was such a blissful thing, and I do believe it is, what is it that's keeping everyone from mass suicide? Because there's so much pain in this particular. A lot of people believe we're enslaved. This is our physical existence. There, people are working themselves to death, basically, and they don't get to experience the joy of life. A lot of people don't. Um, and so, if death is this blissful thing, what is it preventing everybody outside of fear? What is it that's preventing everyone from just making that transition over to this beautiful place?
Well, I would have to say because people are unaware of the death. They think death is death. They're not sure what death means. There's a lot of people that believe that death, when you die, it's just black and that's it, and that it's the end of you. That's what keeps people from just having a mass suicide, is because they really don't know. Most people are really don't know what happens when you die. And the whole thing with religion and church, you know, they really are, in my opinion, in a somewhat. They are the enemy. They're the enemy because they teach you that meditation is demonic, which is it can be more. It can be further from the truth. I mean, it really couldn't be further from the truth. Meditation is to sit in silence and sit with yourself and go within yourself. How can that be demonic? It's just not demonic.
I mean, what would you say from your perspective? What would you say this where we are right now? What is this? Is this a teaching ground? Are we here to learn? Are we enslaved by some other force waiting to break out?
So, from what I've learned, let me back up a little. So, after my awakening experience happened, I, of course, went online and started searching I wanted answers. And I came across a few channelers. I'm sure you probably know what channeling is. It's what the Bible actually is, which is ironic because, all these Bible people say that, meditation is, and channeling is demonic, yet their own Bible was channeled through human beings from a non physical, source. But yeah, so I came across a few channelers and I was just thinking how amazing it would be to fly on a craft with them. Just daydreaming about it in my mind. Two nights later, I went to bed and I found myself in this oval room with three very, very tall beings. And I was sitting on this seating that goes all around this room, and these beings are standing in front of me. And I remember turning to my right and looking out this window. And then I was looking into space and I saw this huge explosion, just a huge explosion. And then this just mothership appeared, the biggest thing I've ever seen. I mean, lights all over it. It was so big I couldn't see space anymore. And it was just so profound that I got goosebumps on my arms. And I went to look down and rub my arms, and boom, I was back in my bed, in my body. And so I didn't know what astral travel was, but that is astral travel. So to answer your question, you asked, what is this? What are we doing here? From what I have learned, all the races, you have to realize that the galaxy is huge and it's full of life. We have a galactic family that has been kept from us, because of our governments wanting to keep secrets and use these technologies that they've come across for their own good instead of for the help and the good for humanity.
What is your opinion on some of the archaic perspectives of good and evil? I mean, it sounds because when I hear some of these interdimensional perspectives and the forces that work against us, it's almost like a different perspective of what is being taught in religion. There's good and evil, there's the devil, and there's God and Christ, and all of these things. And even in other religions and perspectives, even down to mythology, it seems to be a lot of the same things. And I'm wondering, is that how it really is?
This is just, there are demons only exist in a human's mind, but because we are so powerful, because the human mind is so powerful, and there are agreements. So, we agree that there's gravity. That's why there's gravity. We agree that that this is wrong and this is right, but really there is no wrong or right. There really is no wrong and right because again, death doesn't exist. So, you know, um, people think, well, you murdered someone, but you murdered that person because you had that set up before you even were born. People don't realize that we set up contracts before we even come to this life because the oversoul doesn't see any experience as bad or good. The oversoul sees all, it welcomes all experiences.
For the people that don't know, can you explain a little bit about the contracts, the oversoul, the fact that we're so in other words, before we come into this existence, we're setting up some kind of design. It's almost like we're writing the story before we come. Now then our memories are washed in a sense. We're born and now we're experiencing this very elaborate existential game. Is it something like that?
I don't want to call it a game because, and I don't want to disempower people and make them think that they don't have any control, because they do. They do have control. You know, you can commit, you can, kill the body and detach from this existence and be back to the blissful non-physical of what you truly are. But the whole point in washing our memories away and not allowing us to remember, okay? So another thing, when you're a fifth dimensional being, you remember all lifetimes. There is no forgetting about your past life. And that's how I know that we're shifting into higher, levels of frequency, because the children, are remembering their past lives, right? But that doesn't, it's not serving them. So, there's pros and cons to it about serving us, whether we remember all of our lifetimes. But it's something that we all races go through. Some races are, a little bit above us, in the fourth, in a higher dimensional reality. There's races on our planet right now that are surrounding all of us that we literally cannot see, but they're right here. They're right here. We just cannot perceive them. But when you sit in silence instead of being lied to and watching the television, because that's what television does, it lies to you. It keeps you away from being silent and going within yourself and having these really creative experiences with other dimensional realities and being sensitive to them. Um, but if you can do that and silence the mind, because the mind doesn't shut up, it just, you have no control over it. It just keeps going. It just has all these thoughts and it just goes back and forth. Da, da, da. Another interesting thing about that was when I really realized that our minds are not our best friend. In 2017, I went to sleep, and I'm a heavy sleeper, and I was woken up by this really loud frequency in my inner ear. Though I never experienced this before, it was like a ding, like really loud. And the minute that I opened my eyes, I'm laying directly, I'm looking at my bathroom doorway. The minute I open my eyes, I see this being standing in my bathroom doorway. And the first thing that my mind says to me is, your eyes are playing tricks on you. You're not really seeing that. And then she moved slightly forward, and I'm like, oh, yes, she is. That's very real. My eyes are not deceiving me. So I thought it was very interesting that my own mind, I was trying to lie to me and tell me that I wasn't really seeing this being. So after, she probably felt the fear rise in me just a little bit. At this point, I had known about so many races, and I knew the possibilities were there to have an experience. And I never thought I would have a face-to-face visit like that. But um, she backed further into the toilet room, and out came this transparent sphere with like electricity static on the sides of it. And it's like, flying, levitating, whatever, up to the side of my bed. And once it gets to the side of my bed, it shapeshifts into like this small, really tiny object, and then it elongates, and I can see like this, like the yellow or the orange color of a fire, is the color that I saw as this thing was elongating. And then it just silently and slowly went through my ceiling, and I just sat there like, what did I just experience? Like, are you kidding me? I couldn't believe it. So I was frozen for like 5 minutes, and then I just got up and I typed up what I just witnessed. But you brought that out of me, just thinking, the whole mind, the way that mind works, it lies to us all the time. It's always lying to us. There's always the devil on one side and the angel on the other side, the angel. And we don't hear enough of the angel telling us that we are love, and that we are, we need to love ourselves instead of seeking love outside of ourselves, which is what we're taught to do at a very young age. We're never ever taught to go within ourselves, and that all the love that we really need is within ourselves. And if people started doing that, the relationships would improve tremendously. You wouldn't need a relationship. There's so many people that feel so alone and feel like, they need to be loved, but all the love that they need is within themselves. Truly, I can't say that enough. That, when you love yourself, truly love yourself, you will never feel a lack of love, because somebody can love you and then the next day they can take it away from you, right? But when you truly are loving yourself every day, nobody can take that away from you. And it's very empowering to have that love within yourself.